Let's move on with the third step, the graphic layout review. Obviously, this is probably the most important step because it's the moment when we decide that everything that is mechanical, is automated, is transformed in a user-friendly point of view. We want to adapt everything for users. The first point, obviously, is the activation of all the native. Here, I'm just showing you again a video, an example of the video outstream I was explaining before. So probably this format, when the overlay ads in outstream will be enforced by the better ad standard, this format could grow a lot. This is the moment when we decide to push the loyalty. As we said, users are spending more time. So the activation of the native is a great opportunity to extend the opportunities in the long term, even if we think again to the exchange bidding. And because we are Italian and we are foodie, I'm reporting here an example of ricetta.it. So I think that it looks great because we have all the same CSS. The style, again, the native means continuity. It seems to be a part of the website, not just the standard 300 by 350. It looks nice. So I really think that publishers should spend more time working on such elements because I think it's the right thing in the long term, rather than the same 300 by 350, pushing more buyers on that format. The second step of the graphic layout review is obviously the experiments. This is important because I don't think that we will be able to have the best performance from the native at day one. So maybe we have to run some tests. And for this reason, Google released this important solution that it's very intuitive, it's very easy. You can define two simple layouts. We remove the call to action, we switch the image with title and the other elements, and then you can see all the metrics. You can compare the performance of CTR, RPM, or whatever. You can decide the share of the traffic, maybe 10% to the experiment style and 90% to the original style. And then after the flight, you have the start date and the end date, you can decide what kind of style you want to keep. Otherwise, in any moment, you can always decide, okay, I want to keep the original. The experiment is not working. So it's very easy. The second experiment we used to run is exactly the ad balance on AdSense. As you can see here, Google is trying to find the best balance between the user experience and the number of ads. And with only 78% of the impressions, we can keep the same amount of revenue because they think that users will spend more time, they will generate more page views, so we don't lose money, but we increase the loyalty. That is, again, is more value. The third point is the recirculation. This point is, again, is available on the playbook of the News Consumer Insights. So you can find more details about the recirculation inside of that tool. But what about the recirculation? I think that many of you are already using a widget or an ad network to push related articles. But we think, again, that probably the AdSense solution is one of the best because of the control we can have. The first one, obviously, the content settings. I don't know if there are other platforms providing the same, but on AdSense Match Content, you can even select what kind of articles you want to push. If you want, for instance, if you have loyal readers, you can even select the publisher, the newsletter subscription. If you have a page where you want to push users to subscribe, you can set up on the match content, please link this page always. And you will always have inside of the widget that kind of content. If you have a sponsored content where you want to push more traffic because you have a campaign running there, maybe you want to push that campaign always on the widget. On the same time, on the opposite side, you can even decide to block some URLs. So if you don't want to push users in a specific landing page, you can simply deactivate that page on the block list. And obviously the time freshness. This is really important if you think to sports website, for instance, you are providing results of last week. You don't want to correlate articles from 1 year. So you can decide the time range where you select the rated articles. The customization is great. And about the match content, I noticed that many publishers are using always the same. Again, they are using the standard match content. It is not useful. They compare the performance with other ad networks where there is a team working always on the back end. And we took the match content as it is. But if we adapt the style, all the different templates that you can see here, we can have more performance on the recirculation, more page views. We tracked even 10% of CTR in this kind of widgets, depending on the style you run. And in the end, the earnings, 10% on the impressions. I saw a face that was scared. Regarding the earnings, it's important to understand again that we are taking demand from Google, which means millions of clients. The average revenue per click are much higher than any other network. If you compare only the RPM of the widget, obviously it could be lower than other solution with infinite scroll. But what about the loyalty, the recirculation? Those ad networks typically have 1.5 page per session when you run this kind of ad networks. With the match content, we notice that you can increase a lot the user journey. So the real value of the match content is on the subsequent pages you can generate. When you consider the monetization of the match content, you don't have to consider only the CPC, the revenue for each click. You have to consider all the additional pages that you are generating. And the benefit, it's also on the long term, because you will have more loyal readers and probably returning users. So it's very important to consider the match content not only like a widget, but like a tool that you can use to increase your loyalty. The fourth step is the condensation. The condensation is pretty strange. I think it's the moment where ExMarketPlace did its best. And we separated the condensation in few steps. The first one is just the definition of the placements we want to use besides the content. We want to have a simple template. And I want to say this because I noticed that there are many publishers running all sorts of messages on the pages. When you access the page, users is trying to read an article, not to be engaged with tons of messages of subscription, paid links, content correlation, images, outstream videos, unshort ads, or whatever. So there are tons of messages towards the users. So this is just an example. Again, I'm taking 4 placements. These are not ad placements. These are placements where we want to place the ad server. We can have also, the number 3 is a scrolling sidebar if we want to increase the viewability, for instance. So right now we have defined where we want to place all the messages. What does it mean? It means that we want to run, instead of these placements, different finalities. We could have all of these. The content recommendation, maybe through the match content, the services like a newsletter subscription or an app install campaign coming from ourselves, or the e-commerce, if we have our own product, maybe we want to push our product to get paid, to generate revenues. Obviously, the programmatic advertising is on the background. It's always present. But I want to stress the 5th finality, that is nothing. Because as we said here, we are trying to understand what users are seeing when they access to the page. And what I noticed is that typically when you access a web page, an article, you have the title, you have the image, and then you have a content recommendation. I think it's wrong. How is it possible that user is trying to read an article and you are just pushing me other articles? So if we don't have monetization from the programmatic, maybe it's better to use the artificial intelligence to increase the final RPM and just collapse the div if we don't have any buyer. So the nothing finality could be really important for user journey and again, for engagement, because users will go around along the page, generating more revenues, more requests to all these finalities. The 3rd step is the definition of the priorities and the frequencies. I will go quickly through this, but simply here you have to decide what I want to push to the user, what is essential to me, and what I can postpone to the next page. If I have loyal readers, maybe I can decide to set the newsletter subscription because I know they are almost there. I just need to push them the subscription. And then I will send them newsletters to have more brand value from the email channel. Otherwise, if I don't want to run the newsletter, I could have my e-commerce, but I can even put all of them in competition. Let's say we could have 3 impressions per user on the newsletter. If users are not clicking on that, are not engaging, are not converting with the newsletter, maybe we can switch to another finality, the content correlation, or collapse the element, depending on what kind of placement we are considering on the web page. So we don't have to put all of these elements on the web page beside to the content. We are trying to condensate the essential elements and put them in competition.